This transformation, again, from a system that's driven from crisis response to a system that's driven by prevention and early intervention, is achieved through a very massive workforce and funding that directly supports the many, many programs and services that we have for the community, whether it be for mental health or substance use. Not to mention, we are still very much growing, as you can all imagine, and by the silent show of hands earlier, behavioral health needs only really increases. There's just such a wide variety of them, and we want to be able to make sure that we can address them with the attention and effort that they all deserve. And so, with all these resources and efforts, and people specifically placed in our community to help, why do youth and young adults find it difficult to access behavioral health services? Next slide, please. One common challenge is limited knowledge and awareness of available resources and support. With a show of hands, physical or digital, who here thinks they have a pretty decent grasp of the support that's available to you? Okay. And who here has a bit more trouble figuring out that piece, whether it's because you've gotten overwhelmed by the amount of search results you might have encountered, or maybe didn't understand what was credible or reliable, or what was even meant for you? Okay. Well, as you can see, this is a pretty shared experience that I myself even encounter, and I work for behavioral health services. And this is actually a challenge that my team addresses in our work. Next, next slide, please. And so the second common challenge that youth and young adults and often the general public experience when trying to access the behavioral health system is the complexity of the behavioral health continuum of care. And I know continuum of care in and of itself is a bit of a daunting phrase, but fortunately, the meaning of it is quite simple. The continuum of care refers to the network or system of behavioral health programs and services in San Diego County, which, as you can probably imagine from the first half of my presentation, is quite vast. Next slide, please. And last but not least, I know a couple of our hosts mentioned this, but the third common challenge is stigma. And this can include the stigma of mental health and substance use in general, or the stigma of even trying to seek support or even help someone who's struggling through any of these issues. Next slide. So then how can all of us bridge the gaps that these challenges create so that we can improve and continuously build our knowledge and awareness of available resources so that we can understand the continuum of programs and services that we have and know how to navigate through them. And finally, so that we can feel safe and confident to talk about these issues and seek help from friends, family, and behavioral health professionals. Next slide. Well, there are three general actions that can serve as a bridge to services and resources that you can do for yourself and for your friends and family. One is to learn more, and anyone here can do this by exploring reliable resources and services to get accurate information. Two is to get involved, which you can do by participating in opportunities that enhance your knowledge about behavioral health. And finally, the third thing we all can do is to talk about it by engaging in and initiating conversations to share your knowledge and normalize these kinds of conversations. So let's dive a little deeper into each one of these. Next slide, please. First up, learning more addresses knowledge gaps about behavioral health resources by helping to increase awareness and access to information to help you gain knowledge and understanding. It also empowers informed decision making so you can feel confident that you're doing the best for yourself or for your loved ones. And it also promotes self advocacy by allowing you to take a very proactive approach in taking charge of your well being and behavioral health journey. Next slide. So, what does this look like in action? Well, it begins by educating yourself and your loved ones by starting out small and with what you know. As we previously covered, there's a lot out there. And sometimes it can be overwhelming, it can be confusing. So start small, and this is where our local helplines, which include the Access and Crisis Line and the 211 San Diego, come in handy, which you'll get to learn about more in detail later. And another good, reliable place to start is to explore the county's behavioral health services website and send questions through the contact us tab when needed. Other easy access and local resources I wanted to share include It's Up to Us, which again, Lauren mentioned earlier, as well as the San Diego Opioid Project. And if you want a wider resource, you can visit the California Department of Public Health webpage as well. Um, and of course, the way you get started is most definitely not limited to these resources listed on the screen. But if you don't know where to start, these would be really good sources of information that can lead you into getting involved. Next slide. Which brings us to the next thing we all can do to bridge gaps in access, because getting involved addresses the complexity of the behavioral health continuum by helping to encourage active and direct participation in the behavioral health system, thus demystifying certain processes and challenges in accessing programs and services. It also helps provide you with firsthand experience, and it also helps to reduce barriers through involvement by giving you opportunities to access and connect with professionals who you can talk to directly about navigating our system. Next slide, please. So, what can you do to get involved? Well, attending this town hall is already one way you're doing it. But other ways to actively engage in opportunities can include attending community events, taking trainings, and if you're not yet ready for those bigger steps, you can also do things like participating in challenges such as the Video and Visual Art Scoop from Youth Challenge, or by participating in awareness campaigns by sharing toolkits and social media posts. You can even participate in polls and input activities such as, spoiler alert, VHS's upcoming youth mental health campaign brand survey. So keep an eye out on the Live Well San Diego Instagram page for more announcements about that. But all in all, there are so many ways for you to get involved and create spaces to address behavioral health challenges. So feel free to explore and share those opportunities with others because, next slide, talking about behavioral health directly addresses stigma. It helps to facilitate sharing knowledge and experiences with each other. Oftentimes, knowing someone who's already gone through the process or having someone there to guide you will help break down the stigma of behavioral health and seeking support. It also helps you to engage in spreading awareness about mental health issues, which helps to dispel misinformation and break down stereotypes. And finally, it helps to normalize conversations about mental health and substance use to create communities of trust and support, just like the one we're building right now. Next slide. So, what can you do? Well, as you might have guessed, you just need to have conversations, whether it's one on one, in groups, through public messaging like social media or forums. We just need to talk. When you have these discussions with friends, family, coworkers, etc., you're able to create a culture of knowledge, safety, and confidence in not only behavioral health resources, but also in the act of seeking support. One important piece to this is that it can also help people recognize the importance of seeking help early on rather than when things get rough. And so, calling back to that triangle and that concept of addressing issues before they get to the point of crisis response, it comes back to this conversation because oftentimes people don't look for support because it isn't that serious, or other people have it worse than me, or other similar sentiments, which I myself admittedly am guilty of. But by making sure conversations about well being are normalized, we are able to encourage people to see the value in early intervention and seeing all parts of the extreme of behavioral health experiences as valid. And not only is it super impactful to generally talk with others and share your experiences, but it's also so meaningful to share an experience that you have, whether it's from an event, a learning opportunity, etc., with someone you feel really who really could benefit from a change in perspective. We all know at least one person who may feel very strongly against mental health, substance use, or seeking support for a variety of reasons. And so we all understand that it's hard to change someone's world from the outside. And so oftentimes we have to create that change ourselves by learning more, getting involved, and talking about it. Next slide. So, what's the key takeaway of this presentation? It's to encourage you all to be that change, to be that bridge. And maybe some of you have caught on to this already, but you're doing it right now by attending and actively engaging in this town hall. So, being the bridge is not too hard, I hope. So, to end off my presentation, I encourage you all to think about the different ways you can continue to learn more, you can continue to get involved and you can continue to talk about behavioral health so that you can be an active contributor to change and advocacy for yourself and for your loved ones. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you so much for having me. Please feel free to take a picture or a screenshot of the slide. I'll also be dropping in some links and information. But it was a pleasure being with you all today. And again, thank you so much to the youth leadership team for coordinating this and having me here.
Thank you, Annika.
Oh, that turned on.
Thank you, Annika, again for that wonderful presentation. We are going to go now to Sheila, who is going to talk about 988 and give us a quick rundown on it.
Sure, thank you. My name is Shayla. I'm with the San Diego Access and Crisis Line. And so 988 is the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline number. And obviously, it's available to anyone 24 hours a day, 365 days at a year. You can always call. If you dial 988 and your area code is San Diego, so if you have a San Diego area code 619-858-760, you will then be rerouted to us, to the San Diego Access and Crisis Line. And we provide the same level of crisis intervention, suicide prevention, and resources to those seeking support, and the same that 988 offers. So we help people that are in crisis, that call it for themselves, that call for other people, they are unsure about where to go to get help for themselves or others. We have people that call that are suicidal, people that are thinking about suicide, people that are about to kill themselves. So I am very fortunate and I am honored to be there for people in crisis. We also provide help with substance use disorder referrals. So we have people that call struggling with alcohol, with heroin or any other drugs. And we provide these referrals for rehab or outpatient programs or residential treatment programs. The takeaway really is that we are available 24/7 for anyone. Even if you just have questions and you don't know where to start, I say call us. We are a licensed clinician and we have also unlicensed clinician. All of us have a master level education and we have many Spanish speaking counselors as well, but we can accommodate any language. As a matter of fact, we have access to an interpreter service that provide access to over 200 languages. And we can engage these services at the same level of priority as a 911 call. So we're trying to eliminate all barriers for anyone that call in, and we'll meet people where they at. You know, we will see what's the crisis, what they need, and we will try to help any way we can. We also can initiate referral for the mobile crisis response team, which is a newer service where, so before the mobile crisis response team was available, the only way that someone in crisis could get help was to call PERT, which is the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team. And that is a service that is embedded with the police. So what we found over the years is that a lot of time people are afraid of that, or for whatever reason they're not comfortable with that. So if someone is in crisis, they can call us, and if we can, meet some criteria, some safety, establish some safety criteria, we can also have a team go out to them wherever they are and see how they can help. I that's all I can think of right now. But if you have any questions, anything that you're curious about, 988 and the San Diego Access and Crisis Line, please ask me, and I'll be here. I am very happy to be part of this town hall today, and yeah, let me know.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So that was 988. Now we're going to do a quick rundown on 211, which is a resource center that you can call. They also have a website. But we're going to have, I believe, 2 speakers actually who work with them kind of explain to us what that is. And then after that, we're going to do a little like 10-ish minutes of just questions and what's the difference sort of thing, and just really figuring out what they are so that we're comfortable calling them if we need. So I will pass it over to, I believe, Adrian, who should be on here.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. What a tremendous event. What a great job the leaders have done putting this together and starting this conversation, and reminding us all it's okay to talk about these things, and it's important to talk about these things. I reflect back to when I was in high school, which was, I'll just vaguely say, in the 90s, and there was no 211, there was no internet, and it was, I needed help and I didn't know where to get it, and it was a struggle. So to see things being brought forward in this format and so boldly by everyone here today is just tremendous. Thank you for including me as part of this presentation. 211 San Diego is in a lot of ways like a library, a resource library. We have a database of service providers, over 1,200 different service providers, and 6,000 different services that those organizations provide. And they cover a variety of areas of need. Right now, number one, housing, utility assistance, people trying to keep their lights on, stay connected to utility service providers, food, getting enough food on the table to feed the family, to feed the household. Healthcare is certainly a need as well. And we'll start with the question of, do you have insurance? How are you accessing normal healthcare? Are you seeking regular healthcare? Do you have a primary care doctor? And try to make sure that people have access to both physical and mental health services that are accessible and appropriate for them and their needs. We will start by asking the client, how can we help you today? They'll let us know what it was that prompted them to pick up the phone and call 211, and we'll take some time to get to know a bit more about them, their likely eligibility criteria. Are they, transition age youth? Have they been in foster care? Are there persons with disabilities? Are there children under 5? Are they a veteran? What are the things that might pair them with some of the programs in our database? And based on the information provided, self-reported information provided, we'll compare the needs with the resources we have listed and try to find programs that are a good match for that individual and the needs that they're expressing. So we work really in that prevention space that Annika referenced. Our goal is to keep an individual, to keep a household sustainable. And we do that through, as she described, facilitating awareness and access to information. If we can intervene upstream and take some of that stress and pressure off of an individual, off of a household. If they know they'll be able to keep their lights on, if they know they'll be able to stay housed, be able to go to the doctor when they need to, they have access to education and employment, then perhaps we can avoid them getting to the point where they are in crisis and not needing intervention services from Access and Crisis Line or from some of the other programs that have been described today. So we're not a crisis center ourselves. If you call us while experiencing a crisis, we will often do a warm handoff to Access and Crisis Line. They're a tremendous partner and they do very, very good work in the community. Proud to share this space with them. But in times of non-crisis, when you're looking for resources to help just feel more comfortable and more stable, we've got this directory. It is fully available online as well. So if you have reliable access to the internet and are comfortable using it, you can go to 211sandiego.org and search our entire database online. But calling us is free. We're available 24/7. We do staff bilingual English, Spanish 24/7. Any other language needs, we would use a third-party interpreter, much like Access and Crisis Line. But it's our goal to make ourselves available and accessible to anybody in San Diego County who is looking for connections to information and referrals. And so we invite you to call us, see what we can do to help you, and see if we have some services that may be above and beyond what you're looking for, but help to increase your quality of life or fill in other needs that maybe weren't what you were calling about. We'll try to provide a person-centered plan of care that has as much positive impacts as we can. I think that's my 5 minutes, so I'll put my contact information in the chat, and I'm open for any questions as well.
Thank you, Adrian, for that. Now we're gonna go into a quick panel for the call centers. If anyone has any questions about these call centers, you can put it in the chat, or you can, if you're in person, you can write it down on a sticky note, just raise it up and we can take it, or you can just speak out loud.
Yeah, raise your hand and say it if you want to. Question? So what we'll do is we can start off with a couple prepped questions that we have. One big one that I think can create a barrier for calling is when I call either of the centers, who exactly is going to answer the phone and what will they need from the caller?
Sure, I'll go first. We call our 211 information and referral service reps community connectors because they connect the people in our community to the resources available in our community. And they're people like you and me. They go through training on how to use our database, how to assess needs, and how to do good eligibility matching. They get trained on cultural competency and on empathy and on soft skills. But we are civilians. We're just members of the community who have a passion for helping people. And all you need to provide us really is whatever information would allow us to match you with the most appropriate referrals. And so if a referral is for people 18 and under, we need to know, are you 18 and under? If a referral is for seniors, we need to know, are you a senior? If a referral is for a veteran, we need to know if you're a veteran. So we would seek the minimum necessary information to confirm likely eligibility for the program that we want to refer you to.
Thank you, Adrian. And this is Shayla for the San Diego Access and Crisis Line. Our phones are answered by either masters or licensed mental health clinicians. And as far as what we need from the caller, our calls are completely confidential and also anonymous. A lot of time I'll ask, oh, I'll say, my name is Shayla, what is your name? And the person say, you know, I just want to remain anonymous. And that's it. We will ask demographic questions and location, just like 211 and Adrian was saying, just so that we can meet your needs better, so that we can look in our database and see what we have available that would be the best fit for what they're calling for. But if the person is not comfortable and they just want some, you know, general information, or they call because they're in a crisis, we will meet them where they at. And we're not going to ask any question if they don't want to. And they will provide what, you know, what they feel comfortable with, basically.
Thank you for that answer. Another question we had was, do parents or guardians have to get involved? And if so, what role do they play in this?
Maybe I can answer. I can start with that. So usually not. Like I was saying, we do provide confidential service. We have exception, right, with as far as confidentiality with regards to safety to self and others. So if someone calls us and say, you know, I am suicidal and with a plan and an intent, or I'm homicidal, I want to kill somebody else, then at that point the confidentiality will will be override, and we will try to get help for the person. And then again, you know, many times people call, and youth and adults call with, you know, I am suicidal, I will, you know, kill myself, and that's what they're calling. And many times, you know, we'll start a call like that, and then by the end we'll contract for safety. We will come up with a plan of safety, and make a plan where they're going to get help probably right away if it's imminent risk. But yeah, that's pretty much the limit of confidentiality. If there is danger, imminent danger to self or others.
Similarly, to use our information and referral service, there's no requirement for a parent or guardian to be involved. Some of the services we refer to may have a different policy, but just to call us and get information from us, anyone is welcome. There's no age restriction or anything like that. In regards to confidentiality, again, similarly, if somebody discloses that they are a victim of abuse, you know, child welfare, adult protective services, dependent adults, human trafficking, things of those natures, then we do act as mandated reporters, and we would have involved the appropriate agencies if we become aware that somebody is a victim of something like that, and they are not getting the assistance that they need on their own. Outside of those specific circumstances, there's no reason we would share information with anyone else regarding the conversations that we have.
And I wanted to add, absolutely same thing for us for the San Diego Access and Crisis Line in 988. We are also mandated reporters, so we would also report child abuse, um, adult protective services as well.
Thank you so much.
Sorry.
All right, thank you so much for answering all those questions. We are going to do a quick 1-minute stretch break for everyone in person and online. If you guys could all just stand up, you know, shake off some of those. And we're just gonna take a minute and we'll be right back.
We're going to start back up at 3:50, so take a couple more minutes and then we'll hear from Isaac. All right, guys, we are gonna bring it back. Hope you had a very nice stretch and or wiggle. We will pass it off to Isaac. And that's my whole introduction for Isaac.
Thanks, y'all. Can I just say, seeing my face pop up out of nowhere was a little like scary. Like I was a jump scare, not gonna lie. Can all of you hear me okay? Perfect. So anyways, hello. My name is Isaac, and I want to express my gratitude to the youth leadership team for inviting me as a speaker. I was a former youth sector coordinator, so I'm very grateful and very happy to reconnect with you all and be a part of this amazing event. I'm so proud of you all for pulling it off and getting it together. Can you all go to the next slide, please? So I'm gonna do a brief intro about myself. Again, my name is Isaac. My pronouns are he, him, his. I recently graduated from UC San Diego with a background in clinical psychology and global health. And my professional experience, my job right now is I'm a research assistant with the Mental Health for All lab at Harvard Medical School, where I am working on developing peer support training materials to implement on a global scale, both here in the US as well as other cultural contexts, such as India, South Africa, and other partnering organizations and other cultural contexts. I also have previous experience across San Diego in youth advocacy and student well-being on my campus, as well as global health and psychological research. And I'll touch a bit on all of those areas and kind of how that's developed into my experience and kind of where I am today and the broader story of why youth peer support is so important. Next slide, please. So for today, we're first going to talk about my experience being broccoli, and in the next slide, you'll know what I mean by that. I'll then go into the global mental health crisis and specifically why I believe peer support is the solution. And then I'll talk a bit more about the broader peer support landscape, and then finally, how we can get youth more involved in the solution so that we can solve particularly the youth mental health crisis. Before I get into my story and kind of why it's important to me, I wanted to do a quick straw poll with our group, both on Zoom and for those of you in person. Similar to our activity earlier, if you could please raise your hand for each of the following statements that you resonate with. So the first question is, a peer has come to me for mental health support. So if you've had that experience, please raise your hand. Perfect, thank you. Please lower your hand. And then next question. When asked to provide support, I felt confident in my ability to help. Great, thank you. Next question. I am overwhelmed when my peers' problems are too big for me to solve. Great, and then final question. I have received professional training to provide mental health support to those around me. Great. Thanks y'all for participating in my little activity. So the reason I've titled this slide Being Broccoli is oftentimes when people meet me, especially in my, I've been saying a lot, I'm in my adulting era, and I really have been in being in a lot of spaces where I am the youngest face in the room. And my favorite way to introduce myself has either been, I am the father of 7 children, and then everyone looks at me like, what? And then, or I say, my kids say my hair looks like broccoli. The reason for this is that during my undergraduate career, I was the mentor to 7 undergraduate students throughout my entire career, undergraduate and graduate career. A mentor is also called a big or little in many organizations, and many kind of service levels see it as, oh, it's just like a bestie, it's a friend. But being a mentor for me personally, in my experience, and for many of my peers, felt like its own full-time job at certain points in my career and in my life. As a mentor, I was, of course, a friend, and some of my closest friendships have been with my mentees. I have been an academic counselor. I have given them thorough academic advice on their life planning, giving them career opportunities that I did throughout my undergraduate career, connecting them with things that came my way and saying, here are things that you might be interested in. I have been a family member. I have had to help many of them through just advising their personal life. A role model, I feel very weird still saying no, but for a lot of them, I am their one, the person they look up to. And so being very conscious of that role that you get as a mentor. And then lastly, I have oftentimes been an untrained peer supporter. What this means is that many of my littles, and kind of what sparked my passion for peer support from the get-go was I had experiences where my littles would come to me with ideas of suicide ideation or having a crisis episode, or having traumatic relapse. And this occurred when I was just a second year, and that kind of went on throughout my undergraduate career. And I kind of had a moment where when I was overwhelmed, because I had my own mental health issues that I was balancing, I also was like, I don't know what to do because I am not trained to attend to these needs. I am not trained in any model of therapy. I mean, I now have a degree, but that degree doesn't necessarily teach me how to, implement these models. And I'm not trained, especially when you have one of your children who you love dearly saying, Isaac, I want to die. You can't really tell them, oh, you should go see therapy. In that moment, you have to do something to help them, since they came to you for crisis. So that kind of got my passion out for wanting to train youth, to become peer supporters. And eventually I did become trained. But I want to really emphasize as I continue to go through this presentation that my story is not siloed and even unique. I am not special in that experience. Unfortunately, many college students and even high schoolers experience this experience of being the therapy friend where a lot of people will come to you with their problems, but realistically, we only come to it oftentimes with our lived experience and how we got through it versus an actual training of how can we actually provide effective proper care. And why that's important, I'll get into in a few slides, but next slide, please. Oh, there you go. So I'll just quickly go over statistics since y'all went over it earlier. The ones I really want to draw attention to is following the pandemic, there's been a significant increase in anxiety and depression across all age groups, especially youth. Just last year, it was found that 1 in 7 youth live with the disorder, and half of those, if not more, do not receive, do not receive any form of treatment. Globally, as well as in the US, we lose billions of dollars due to ineffective care or due to the loss of labor due to these illnesses. And then lastly, and most notably, in my opinion, is suicide is the fourth ranking leading cause of death for youth ages 16 to 25 as of 2022. And if not, probably got even more increased depending on stats. But I want you all to just take that landscape and kind of hold on to those facts as we continue through our presentation. Next slide, please. So some of the barriers to addressing youth mental health specifically, I feel like can be summarized in these 4 quadrants. The first one being content. Most existing psychological interventions for youth require complex and extensive training. In order to become a mental health care provider, most of the times it requires some form of a degree. And even after your degree, you require extensive training to become a provider. So it can take years to develop a single provider. Now, when you kind of maximize that timeline, when you consider multiple different states, it can take longer, shorter, especially considering there is an increasing demand for providers at this time. And that goes into the supply issue. Following the pandemic, there has been a exponentially increasing demand for mental health care. And despite this demand, the rate of people becoming providers as of now is not able to catch up with that demand, which results in things such as super long wait times, lack of a culturally diverse workforce. And so for many queer people of color, for example, they may not be able to find therapists that share similar lived experiences, as well as other issues in terms of finding services. Quality is another issue where even when you get licensing, et cetera, you still require extensive training and supervision in order to deliver these interventions, which requires extensive labor from mental professionals who otherwise could use that time for mental health intervention delivery, but cannot since it's dedicated to quality assurance. And then a particular barrier unique, in my opinion, to youth specifically is for youth such as myself who want to become service providers in a more informal space or informal setting, for example, in college settings, there's often this perpetuation of infantilization, tokenism, or other practices which limit youth autonomy. And what this means is oftentimes these institutions will perpetuate the idea that youth are not grown enough to provide the support. But again, I want to refer to my story from earlier and mention I was a second year, I was 19 years old, and I was the person that youth are most comfortable going to versus an actual therapist. And so what a lot of institutions should be doing is harm reduction and prevention and really training these youth because in the case these situations come up. However, due to concerns like liability and other things, there's this concern that youth can trigger one another. But there's been extensive research that shows anyone can trigger anyone. And so when you really get critical and you critically analyze that conversation, it does have a lot of lineage and rootage in this idea of infantilization. But I can talk about that for hours. And if you all want to talk more, you can email me or we can talk about it separately. Next slide, please. So I now want to get into peer support and defining peer support. So for many of the previous presentations, a lot of y'all touched on topics of what peers essentially do within their roles. A peer support worker is a new role that's developed or is being implemented across California in the last few years, but has a history, a lengthy history, where peer support workers are those with lived experience of recovery, either from a mental health issue or from substance use or both. And they use that lived experience to assist, guide, and support others with a similar mental health condition. Again, at the core of this practice is lived experience and speaking from how did you recover, what are resources that you had, etc. And this can also include other things like resource sharing, practical support, like where can I find support, similar to the things that 201 mentioned actually, where can I find resources for my basic needs, etc. Or it could be other things like developing coping techniques or promoting social engagement. But at the core of this model is also mutuality and this idea that it is just peer-to-peer, it is an equal playing field versus traditional care models where it oftentimes can feel like a power dynamic of a physician or a provider and then their patient, where oftentimes it can feel much more hierarchical, whereas peer support aims to decolonize and really deconstruct that model. Next slide, please. So how peer support solves each of these barriers to addressing youth mental health is summarized here. For content, peer support training is a very brief training that on average takes between 40 to 80 hours. And then for certain programs across the US, some form of a training period as well, where they have hands-on delivery training before certification. And so compare that about roughly 1 to 2 months of training compared to a few years of training to create a mental health care provider with, let's say, like an LCSW, a doctorate, etc. That time frame is a lot shorter. And so that opens the opportunity to exponentially expand the mental health care workforce by implementing peers to provide non-critical level mental health care, opening the doors, especially for youth to connect with other youth on similar issues. In terms of quality, there's been a lot of science that shows peer-to-peer supervision is just as effective as expert supervision with the correct training and with effective infrastructure in place. And then most importantly, in my opinion, is the youth-related factor of the reality is youth are most likely to seek support from their fellow youth first. And taking that into account, if we equip youth, such as myself when I was 19, with peer support skills, that would ensure much more effective support rather than winging it and opening the door for the possibility of a not good outcome. Next slide, please. We can skip over this actually, but next slide, please. So that previous slide, now summarized into this slide also, is that peer support goes all the way back to the 60s or 70s, where it was a community response to medical mistreatment within psychiatric institutions. And it has continued to develop to essentially be a by the community for community movement of peers wanting to provide support within their communities as an alternative to hegemonic and oftentimes offering support to only one type of community and really making it a community-centered form of care. Peer support is in a very unique place right now where it has become much more formalized, especially after the pandemic. Just recently within San Diego, actually, training has been offered, and that's where I got my training certification. But on a national level, President Biden has announced his agenda where he is now investing millions of dollars in the national certification and the expansion of these services and of this training. And particularly just this year within the House, the Support Act has been proposed where this would invest millions of dollars into expanding particularly youth peer support and training our youth in these programs to deliver peer support, particularly in educational settings, such as the one I was in. Next slide, please. So how youth, or honestly anyone can get involved is, for those of you in San Diego, NAMI offers their Medi-Cal Peer Support Specialist Certification Program, which is a 2.5-week training program. That's how I got certified. And through that, you can get one, trained and certified to provide peer support using your lived experience to others. When I was trained, I was one of 2 youth out of about 60 people. The reality is the peer support workforce is extremely skewed to be an older community. However, youth are one of the most vulnerable communities that I think require the service. So I especially encourage, for example, the high schoolers, those of you who are in college or even just graduated college, consider getting certified just so you have this skill. And it'll be interesting and oftentimes applicable to many other career areas, even if you don't become a direct peer support specialist provider. And the other thing is Mental Health America, one of our partners in my current job, is doing a town hall on the Support Act to talk about ways that you can get involved in government advocacy and legislation advocacy to help continue pushing for peer support interests within the youth space across the US. Next slide, please. Again, I am always happy to connect. I have a door open policy. If you all ever have any questions or just want to talk more about youth peer support or just supporting youth in these settings, I'm very passionate about it. And I'm always happy to connect with anyone, especially youth. Or if you're a youth that wants to learn more about getting involved in this career field or in youth peer support, please feel free to connect either through my email or through my LinkedIn. But thank you all again so much for inviting me to speak, and I'm always happy to answer any questions you all have.
Thank you so much, Isaac, for talking about peer support. Just to reiterate, we are going to be sending out the slides, so if you do want the links to those different trainings, you can find those in the email that we're going to send afterwards. And so for our next segment, we're going to have Michelle speak quickly about the child assessment.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in today's town hall, and thank you so much for the youth leaders who have coordinated this. So my name is Michelle Alcantar. I'm a community health promotion specialist, and I'm with the County of San Diego's Public Health Services Department. And today I wanted to provide an introduction to something that we practice every 5 years. So the formerly known as the California Department of Public Health Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Needs Assessment. So what does that mean? Every 5 years, California's health department requires San Diego's health department to go ahead and find out what it is our community need, as well as those existing systems that are working. And in the team that I am a part of, we help programs that support moms, children, and adolescents. So this is an opportunity, as I mentioned, to learn about programs and activities that are already existing and how we can also best support them. The responses that are collected during this needs assessment help identify ways in which we, the county, and other organizations can best support and provide these services. So because we have a specialty or a special segment with adolescent health, I am here to share about how the needs assessment has been used in the past. So the one that happened last was back in 2018, 2019, and we reached out to community organizations to let us know what the needs in the community are and what is working. And so from those findings, we were able to help create goals that focused on those findings, and we implemented those goals from the years 2020 to 2025. So it's really important to know what's going on because it does determine what we do for the next 5 years. In this case, we focused on mental health and substance use among youth as our focus area. And so an example of how we went ahead and did this was that we understand that social media and any online conversation is likely to happen among youth. So we were able to partner up with the Live Well San Diego social media work group, and in partnership with Kayla Trinidad this year as our youth social media coordinator, and last year with Jasmine Guerrero, we were able to co-create social media posts focusing on mental health as well as other topics that touch on teens, such as February's Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and topics that we can go ahead and support one another. So with these health campaigns, I just wanted to show you all that this is one way that we have been able to put into practice what those identified needs were. And I do want to highlight that the specific campaigns that we've worked with together have been reviewed and approved by our County of San Diego Public Health Officer, which is definitely really important for us. So with all that said, today I wanted to take a couple of minutes to ask for your help in the planning and process that we are working on. So because this is the year 2024, we need to figure out what we need to work on for the years 2025 through 2030. And I do want to acknowledge that throughout history, it is possible that information gathered about a particular community may not have been directly been received or asked of the community members. And for this reason, we want to be more inclusive, and we are here so we can gather your input on how to best frame questions or really get your thoughts on our approach. So today's discussion, as you can see for those who are online, there is a Jamboard discussion link that you can go ahead and click on, and I'll go ahead and start off by asking also for those who are in person, if you can share out or if the mic can be passed on. We wanted to just get a general feel. We wanted to get a general feel of just a simple question as like, how do teens want to be referred to when it comes to having questions framed for them? So there is teens, adolescents, youth. Is there any other term that we have not had in mind yet? And okay, so online, I see 2 dot points for youth being the preferred term. I'm going to go ahead and ask those that are in person, can I get a raise of hands, or someone want to share what the best way? Okay. All right, so I definitely understand that we are getting close to the end here. So we'll move on to the next slide, please. And we wanted to also know, what is a good way to collect information from youth? I'm going to keep that in mind, from youth. I'm wondering if there's any hands up in the room. Okay, social media, specifically engaging things like polls on Instagram. Okay, thank you for that. And if you're not familiar with Jamboard, please go ahead and click on this sticky icon on the left side, and then feel free to type in your response, hit that save button, and then your answer will be displayed. Okay, surveys. When it comes to surveys, what is your preference? In person, online, through a QR code? Online, okay. Thank you. I'm gonna give it about 10, 15 more seconds. Okay. And so as I mentioned before, we really want to collect information. Oh, I see outreach tables at schools. Thank you for that. Okay. So I know that in the past we have focused on mental health and substance use. However, we're definitely open to learning about other topics that we might not necessarily be aware of. So if we can go on to the next slide here, the question that I'm interested in knowing is, what should we consider when we develop these questions? The length of the survey, the online survey, or any other ideas? What else should we consider when we develop questions to help find ways in which we can further assist the youth or be there for them? Okay, length of questions and accessible language. Thank you. Okay, length, not making it too long, and simplicity of questions, understandability. Noted. Okay. All right. Well, while you all are still thinking about that question, if it's all right, we can go on to the next slide here. And this is, how should we reach out to youth to get their feedback on this particular needs assessment? I know that we previously shared on schools, on site in schools during doing outreach. I've made note about the online survey, making sure we're not making the survey too lengthy and ensuring it is understandable across. Okay. Extracurricular events, sports clubs. Thank you for that. And again, it's really great to get these ideas because we will be working on our whatever we end up finding this particular year, we'll be focusing our energy on it for the next 5. One idea is to discuss this with schools/teachers first and having them ask their students to respond. Got it. Thank you. And this other one, places where teens do extracurriculars, such as the YMCA, library, and other locations. Okay. Thank you. I see organizations like Boys and Girls Clubs that work with youth and spend a lot of time. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, I definitely want to extend my thank yous to you all for participating. Let me see if something, okay, I believe it just moved. I just didn't want to miss any. I will now open up the mic to my colleague here, Kirtana, who you previously heard her introduction, just to see if she has any other questions or comments to add. Kirtana?
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I just wanted to echo what you had said, Michelle, just thanking everyone. You did a great job, Michelle. So I really don't have much to add except to say we really wanted to hear from you directly. And so we're so grateful that we were able to join this town hall and really, really appreciate the comments that were on the Jamboard. So thanks, everyone.
Great. And I definitely know that we are short on time, so I will toss it back to the youth leaders to move on to the next agenda item. I appreciate all of you.
All right, thank you so much, Michelle and Kirthana. Now we're going to move on to a quick Q&A for all of our speakers. We've gathered the sticky notes from everyone in person. If you're online, please type your questions into the chat and we'll convey and the speakers can take turns answering those questions. These are responses, these are questions. And so the first question that we're going to start off with while everyone's prepping their questions is if you have any advice for youth facing anxiety over their future, particularly with the increasing and mental health crisis.
I can go ahead and start off with answering that question. For me personally, I always like to take the approach of identifying what's within my control and out of my control. That's always been a very like tethering concept for me, especially when, you know, your thoughts run wild. The whole thought of like, you have the whole world, like the whole life ahead of you. There's the whole world for you to explore. So a lot of times all of those anxieties, all of those like fears can come all at once. And so taking a moment to like physically write out what you can do in this moment in time, like your short-term goals, your long-term goals even, has is like my best advice when dealing with anxiety and anxious thoughts.
That is wonderful advice. I also would emphasize, don't isolate. Don't reach out. Reach out to either be a friend, a professional, a peer, a family member, whoever you, or school counselor, whoever you feel comfortable with. I think that that's very important as well.
I think in addition to what Annika said, what's helpful for me at least is asking myself, why is it even important? I think oftentimes we get really tripped up on parental expectations or like what society thinks, or um, we think we want something, but the reality is we ourselves don't, but we've been told we should want that. Um, I think when you really sit down with yourself, and like Annika mentioned, really write out your goals, and I think ask yourself the motivation behind those goals, it does help to take a step back and realize some of the times we're not choosing ourselves first, and we are stressing out over something that actually isn't as important as we initially thought it was.
Thank you to all of our speakers. I think that was Isaac, Sheila, and Annika, I believe, that spoke. Thank you for answering that question. Another question that we do have is, how has the county seen success with their youth mental health programs? I know we talked a lot about like where we need more support there, but what kinds of success has the county seen so far?
I suppose that's technically lobbed in my direction. So I don't have the data on me right now, but if we're talking like very hard results, like data and things like that, we've seen a lot of good results from it's up to you, it's up to us campaigns. So for example, you might have remembered those like teal and yellow billboards, like bus shelter ads that focused on like fentanyl, for example. So that received a lot of engagement from the community. On like smaller scale things, like our team has had very good turnout in like feedback forums that focus on youth. And overall, like you mentioned, there's a lot of good progress being made in terms of having youth-focused efforts, but we are trying more to reach out to, like, youth in rural areas, maybe youth who, are, like, Spanish speakers first or even, like, Tagalog, for example. And so really trying to apply all of those efforts in a way that can encapsulate all youth who are experiencing, like, housing insecurity, aside from, the quote unquote typical mental health issues and substance use disorders.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to over at Public Health Services, we have had the opportunity to pilot. So for the first time this past summer, we piloted a program called the Public Health Advocate Camp. And so what that means is that 4 groups over at Public Health Services came together to go ahead and have a 5-day curriculum-based camp on different health topics. And one of the health topics actually was mental health. And I had the opportunity to basically the breakdown of the curriculum was day 1, it's your intro 101 to mental health. The second day, it was exploring data and statistics. The following day was focused on learning about what a health campaign how a health campaign works and the different ways it can look like on a smaller scale, on a larger scale. And then the end product or the final project was to create a health campaign focused on your topic. So there was mental health one-pagers and if we didn't have a budget, what would you do? And so I would just say that I'm excited as a quick plug that we will be having that this upcoming summer too. And Public Health Services is working in partnership with SDCOE, so San Diego County Office of Ed. And what they do is they will share an email blast to all the different schools within San Diego County to share this opportunity. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you're from North County or from South Bay, everyone is invited. And if you sign up, you can go ahead and choose to be a part of this camp. So I would say that's another effort that we're trying to do over at Public Health Services is to make sure that there's opportunities to learn, but then also opportunities to apply what you learned. So Kirthana, my colleague, has now inserted our contact information if you have more questions about that. But I will also share this information with our youth leaders in the future so that you all can get that. I will stop now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Annika and Michelle, for talking about just some of the progress that our county's made. So now we are going to be going, because I know we're a little bit late on time, but we're going to be going to our feedback form.
Okay, so as we begin to wrap up this town hall, we want to hear from you. So this QR code, which will be also available once you guys get that email with the slides, this QR code will take you to an anonymous survey for our virtual participants. This link will be in the chat, and we will be sending these results over to the Behavioral Health Services data team to learn more about our community and our community's needs. And they will help direct their efforts directly to youth. There is also a section to help improve town halls like this one for the future for Live Well San Diego. As well, all questions are optional, so you only need to answer the ones that you feel comfortable with or that you would want to give some feedback. So the QR code, sorry, should be right here, which it will also, you can access it also through that email later on. Okay, and then just some final thoughts and thank yous. We want to thank everyone here for showing up and supporting us and educating our community on mental health. We would also like to thank all of our amazing speakers for providing us with such great resources and information. So thank you to them. And let's please give them a quick round of applause. We would also like to thank all our youth coordinators and staff members that you see behind you, and virtually you can't see them, but they're here in the room with us. So we would like to give a big thank you to them for helping us through this process, providing us with guidance and these materials. And we hope that you all leave today with a new understanding of mental health and use what you have learned to better yourself and those around you. And these slides, once again, will be sent over so you can refer to any information, resources, and links. And we thank you so much for listening and helping make a difference in your community. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So much for attending. We really appreciate it. As you mentioned, we will be providing gift cards for those that are interested. We can include that to the end of the tables, and we'll get the gift cards. So thank you so much for coming, everyone. And once again, we can give it up for our youth leaders.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.